Ooh, boy. Finally getting to a really important television show that I've heard about for years. Luckily, no spoilers. In fact, like, honestly, the only thing I know about it is I feel like I've heard someone compare it to Gravity Falls, and that, like, saying, like, oh, Gravity Falls, it's like Twin Peaks for kids. And I do not fucking see that right now, except, like, the only similarities are that they take place in, like, kind of, very out of the way, you know, countryside, lots of woodland, small population areas, and there's, like, supernatural elements, but to very differing degrees. Like, I don't think that's a spoiler, because it's, like, Gravity Falls is way more into that, whereas Twin Peaks, it's there, but it's very small in comparison. So far, I don't know what happens in the rest of the show. Uh, but yeah, it's interesting to finally be getting to it, and I did like it. I would not say love, but I'm also not even a fifth of the way through the series yet. Like, season 2 is more than twice the length of season 1. There's a movie, and then there's the more recent third season that's even longer. So it's like, or no, I forget which one is longer, but they're both over twice as long as season 1. So yeah, non-spoiler parts. I think, I guess one of my things with it is that, like episode 1 it was really good. It was really engaging. Like, the way, because basically the basic premise is that a murder happens in Twin Peaks, and they call an FBI agent or an FBI agent comes in to help solve it, and it's a murder mystery crime series basically. As we get involved with the small town and its people and the corruption within it. But like just the first part of the first episode, the way it handled the discovery of the body and the just like rippling effect of her death across the town, and just like we see her parents as they like they don't. I don't even think they're even directly told that she's. Oh, no, the mom was, but the dad wasn't. But he just sort of figured from the way like everyone was acting and just the mood of the town that like once a police officer came to him, he just it just clicked into place, and he just started grieving because he realized what had. Same with Donna, who was Laura, the victim's friend, Laura at school, and like she just the way like the series will just let it knows the audience knows, so it doesn't fully like, and the characters also can pick up on things without it being directly explained, which I appreciate. And yeah, the town, the cast is plenty colorful. I think my favorite's probably Cooper, the FBI agent. Because he's just a cool dude who loves this town, and even though he's only just got here, and he's unashamedly like a foreigner, like he's just there's no attempt or desire to blend in, but he's into the town, and it's cool. But yeah, since it is a mystery, I can't think of a lot to say without spoiling, because again, the cast is pretty solid. They have the various subplots going through the first season. The first season very much doesn't resolve a lot. Like, it ends with so many cliffhangers. I was like, fuck. So, I guess, to someone who's interested in this show but hasn't watched it yet, don't expect to stop at the end of season 1. And also there is some resolution, for sure. But it's very much like, there's just so many cliffhangers. I was like, God damn it, no, is this where they're ending off on all these things? Like, they're all big things, and they just kind of, it almost feels like the episode before a season finale, if that makes sense, like where the season finale would have all the big climaxes and stuff. But I do think it was well handled, but I'll talk about that in the spoiler section. Visually, the show's got pretty well directed, and just the general sets and location and setting have a neat mood to them. But yeah, I can't think of much else to talk about without going into spoilers, except I don't know, just something, because like the main they're an FBI agent working with cops to solve a murder, and I just like something striking about the show is it's just donut fixation. Like, there's just so many scenes with spreads of donuts. And I like donuts, so they make me hungry. But it's just like they're almost like ever present, and it's just like I don't know. It was a little funny to me. Like in the first episode where like I used it as my picture in the Twitter thread, and I might have used it in this video. Or my Twitter backlog thread, where I tweet out all the media I finish for the year. And it's just like Cooper and Truman just sitting at the table like, oh yeah, donuts. It's good. But anyway, moving into spoilers proper. So yeah, I like Cooper. He's a fucking weirdo with his crazy ass fucking dreams and fucking just the way like he just like just starts. So I have a spiritual connection to Tibet and its plight, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And and then he just like starts explaining his ability and what he can do, and then we see it like actually take if like it's something something seems to be going on like with the rock in the bottle where he writes on all the names and he throws the rock, and if it breaks the bottle, there's something to look into. So he finds out about the connection to like he uses it to like obviously it's not evidence, but he uses it to point him in the direction of evidence to use, and it works out. Like they found found a lot of shit that way, just having a direction to go off of instead of having absolutely nothing. Truman's good. The Watson kind of like he even makes a joke about that, because he makes a joke about that. Like there was the one Albert, I think shit, I forget the name. I'm just blanking on it. Where the people who investigate the dead bodies, because he was a piece of shit and just very elitist and hated this place where Cooper was defensive of or like what was the line? It was a good line. Like yeah, because he's used to cynicism and just general disdain for humanity. So but Twin Peaks is a place like because this town was so affected by Laura's death. It's this life has meaning here, and he thought that was just gone from the world, and so where Albert life doesn't really seem to have meaning to him because he just cuts up dead bodies without thinking of them as like former people. They're just objects to him, and Truman didn't take kindly to him being a piece of shit. Like it was just a good set of interactions for them. And in general, like Laura's death, like I mentioned how like well handled it was, like, it worked to get across like here's how devastating this was for this community. Like just, one of them died and it sucked and it's brutal. And like one interesting way I thought it was handled was like with her dad, who shows up, especially through the second half of the show, where he's still just in such utter, like, grief and despair that he's, see, it's like, because I've suffered some loss in the last couple of years, and I would say that, like, I didn't feel it as extreme, like, I didn't, jump on a coffin during a funeral and, like, sob, like, the way he got his grief, like, this is a man who needs help, and he's not getting that help, and so he's lashing out with his grief in just these baffling and illogical ways. But, like, I don't mind that because for a couple reasons, and one of them is just that grief isn't logical. Like, it's just a deep emotional pain that he doesn't have a good outlet for it. No one's helping him. And, so even if I didn't, like, connect with his grief in that sense, like, because I just, like, it's not quite cringing, but, like, just like it's he's like dancing with his daughter's photo at the end of like one of the earlier episodes, and the like just it's a little rough to watch, but also like aside from just grief being something like because I'm sure some of these things have happened just in reality just because and other people do crazy things for love, so why not grief over the loss of a loved one, right? And then like one of the ways that the show sort of worked that almost into its favor was like after the funeral bit, like literally right after that, it cuts to just three people, and like one of them mimes like him jumping on the coffin with some they were in a diner at a counter or something like that, and she just mimed that, and then they started laughing, right? Like they're just mocking him and his grief because they don't get it, and like that made like even though I was just like just moments ago like nearly cringing at Leyland's very awkward and yeah, illogical and weird expression of his grief, like I still like that's not, I wouldn't laugh at that and that like slightly frustrated me, and it was like God damn it, the show knew it knows what it's doing, fuck. And to back that into sort of I guess so far the most interesting thing like conflict wise about the show, or just like what it's doing with its ideas, is just a sort of like innocence, I guess, and or idea of loss of innocence maybe, where because like Laura's whole thing was she likes corruption, because she's in this idyllic, peaceful town, and so she sort of dips into like, she wants, like, it turns out that fucking the murder happened because of her deviancy and the crowd she was in, and it wasn't necessarily like, obviously murder is murder, and death is, or even it's like, even if it's manslaughter, it's still like, punishable, right? And the people who are fucking involved are pieces of shit. Leo's a fucking bastard. Like Jack is a fucking drug dealer. Like they're pieces of shit. But it's still not as like black and white as it might have seemed at the start of the show. But like, so, and I guess like it even, I guess, to use knowledge and, again, speaking on a platform that I mostly use to talk about anime, it's not even like, you can kind of see similar ideas in various Japanese work. Like, I think it was the Pause and Select Isekai series, the third one, where they talk about how, like, there are a lot of Isekai series are dark and really fucked up, and they mention how, Japan is a really peaceful country. So in fiction, they have these, fucked up works to go to for catharsis, because they don't get that in their real lives. They don't have these, dark or horrible things going on necessarily in their immediate lives. Or my friend had a point where it's like in Uganda, where they're surrounded by war, they have celebrations of life very often, but in America, where things are relative, have been in its various times relatively peaceful, they have goths or something, who, people who just like lean into that darkness, right? And so Laura works in that very same way, basically, where she went to this darkness because she was choked by the light, you could say, or smothered by the light, perhaps, of Twin Peaks. But the other thing with the innocence or loss of innocence, rather, is that, like, because the town is so like yeah, that's why Leyland can't get help, because like, how many times have people in the city grieved to such a depth, right? Like, no one knows how to deal with it because so few people have lost something in that way. Like Josie seems to have been involved in the death of her former husband, so like she wouldn't have had that level of grief. That was something they dropped in one of the last episodes. And then like Andy at the start of the show, he was like fucking crying, taking pictures of the crime scene, and it wasn't the first time he's done this, but like, he's a police officer. He's one of the people who manages the peace, and he hasn't experienced enough of this shit to be numb to it. Like, again, this is a place that has value in life, and Cooper wants to protect that, but there are issues to contend with when you're so familiar with that kind of peace and quiet, and in this case, inexperience. And of course, there's just the overall thing with, like, you have fucking Audrey's dad, Ben, and Leo and Jack, who are basically, they're far from innocent, and they're using that the town's lack of innocence and resulting ignorance to take advantage of the town, of this peaceful area, and do shitty things. And like there's the One-Eyed Jacks, which is prostitution, presumably, and there's the drug trade going on, and God knows what else fucked up shit is happening. Because Truman even said that there's that's the dark side of the town that is able to thrive here because of how good they have it. And so yeah, I like that angle, and I find it interesting, and I'm kind of curious as to what the rest of the show will do on that, or what else the rest of the show will do in general. Because man, they did not resolve much, and I'm like, fuck. But yeah, I guess like as far as other things to talk about, I guess like there's the dream sequence, which when it first happened was like, what the fuck? And then it was explained in the next episode. I did go back and rewatch it, or some of it, because like, and it was just like really long with the midget dancing and whatever. And it's like, do I want to say? Yeah, I guess I'll talk about that, because like, it's David Lynch's involvement. I've seen Eraserhead, which I didn't care for, mostly because it's a horror movie, and I just do not give a shit about horror, and it just does not make me feel anything. Like, the most of it Eraserhead made me feel was laughter, because there was a couple funny parts, and I don't think well, come on, when the main character's like trying to leave, and his hideous monster baby is like crying every time he like opens the door, like he closes it, and the baby quiets down, and he opens it again, and the baby, like, that's fucking funny. I don't know what to say. But anyway, that's a different thing. But because his styles, David Lynch is, he uses dreams and dream, like, Eraserhead kind of is like a nightmare, and then he has the dream sequence in Twin Peaks. So it's like, I see it, but I don't know. I just hope that if he does it again, it's more interesting because, like, it was a cool sequence, but I don't know. It's just a dumb nitpick I have, but I'm just a little annoyed with the midgets in dreams trope, and I don't know how. I mean, mostly because I've also seen Living in Oblivion, which it's an indie film about making indie films, like and it's got Steve Buscemi and Peter Dinklage in his movie debut. And why that's notable is because he's sort of talked about how, as an actor, he with dwarfism, he didn't want to stoop to playing roles that, and sort of compromise his integrity and play roles like Oompa Loompas or leprechauns or roles made for dwarves, basically. So yeah, he didn't want to play those kind of roles. And so in Living in Oblivion, he plays a dwarf who was cast as as a in a dream sequence, and he starts questioning the fucking director over it, and then he eventually just storms off the set because they're just like, well, it's a dream sequence, it's weird, so we have a dwarf to make it weird. And then it's like also apparently like Twin Peaks is actually the first time I've seen it because I haven't watched a lot of, I guess, older, because these are both 90s works, and maybe it was a really common trope for a period where it's not yet, but like, I think they even mentioned in the movie that, well, if it's so common a trope, that it's not actually that weird for there to be a dwarf in a dream sequence. Like, so I don't know where Twin Peaks falls in that. Like, is it the reason that this is a common trope? Is it just another thing falling in with that trope? I don't know the history of it, but it's just like, I'm slightly, because like, there were a lot of meaningful things in the dream, and the midget was not one of them. And maybe it wasn't David Lynch's, fault. Maybe it was a production thing where they're just like, well, you got to make sure the audience knows it was a dream sequence. So the dwarf has to be there to make it weird, even though there was so much other weird shit going on in the dream. Like, like for the first time watching it, I found it incomprehensible, and I had to go back. Like I said, so yeah, like I said, just a nitpick. But I don't know. Maybe there is a really good reason as to why there's a midget there, and not literally anything else. Like, again, if innocence is a major theme of the work, why not a child? An innocent kid. Like, what does dwarves? What does some of dwarfism have anything to do with anything in Twin Peaks? Like, maybe he'll show up as a character in later season, and they'll do something that works. But I don't know, just slightly bugged me, I guess. Bugged me enough to spend like a quarter of the video talking about it. Watch Living in Oblivion, good movie. But yeah, I guess as far as the other characters, Bobby was another standout to me because he's just got like, he's a shitty kid with this like really fragile masculinity, like especially when he's like, got Shelly and he's talking with her and he's got a gun and he's like, yeah, Leo, I'm gonna shoot him, and he comes up with this dumb monologue about what he's gonna say to Leo before he shoots him, and then Leo comes home and he just fucking immediately runs away. Like, he's just stepping out the back door and he's like, nope. And it's like, you little fuck. But yeah, I guess I'm also just, because I do like the show, but it's not really for me right now close to like best show ever material. Like, I mean, I'm sure if you like someone who really likes mysteries, like they probably already saw the show, but if they haven't, they fucking need to see the show because it's a fucking mystery. Watch it. Hello. So maybe it's just it hasn't done enough to click with me yet. Like, I like it, I find it interesting, but I just hope it pops off in season 2 or the movie, because I just want it to I want it to click with me a little more, and it hasn't reached that point. But I'm interested. I am engaged. That's step number 1. So yeah, hopefully we'll watch it. More of it eventually. Guys gotta vote for it or not. There's other things I could read or watch too. It's up to you. That's the whole point of the Backlog Builder.